When I was cleaning up my room, a marriage certificate suddenly fell out. Found his business card, called and asked, "Are you free for a divorce tomorrow?" Roses weave a romantic fantasy. Chase to see Roses romantic meaning endless. A road of romance never ends. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Beautiful drama on Time to Embrace. 3 years ago, I got married with a license to a man I had only met twice. Before the wedding, we agreed that the marriage would only last 6 months. He helped me to fix uncle family. I accompanied him to see his grandmother. Later, I was busy graduating and looking for a job, changing houses. I forgot about the divorce. If it wasn't for the fact that I tidied up my room today and found my marriage certificate, I think I would have forgotten about my married status. Are you in a hurry to find someone? After a moment of silence, Ethan Ford's magnetic voice came over. To be honest, after 3 years, hearing Ethan Ford's voice again, I was still inevitably nervous, even though I was no longer the little girl who had asked for help. Poor, neither. Then I'll leave when I finish the project at hand. Is that okay with you? Is it going to be long? I asked cautiously. Ethan Ford paused for a moment. 3 months. Can you wait? Yes, I think so. I'm going to say no, like I'm in a hurry to find someone. Okay. Ethan Ford got the answer he wanted and hung up the phone. 3 months later, I dialed Ethan Ford's phone again. Mr. Ford, do you have time recently? Is this about the divorce? I have a meeting right now. I'll call you back later. Without waiting for me to answer, he hung up, held the phone from 2:00 p.m. to 2:00 a.m., and finally fell asleep because I couldn't get through it. When I woke up, it was already 9 o'clock. There was a missed call on my phone, Ethan Ford's cell number, and a text message from him. See you at City Hall at 9:10 a.m. Didn't even wash my face. Grabbed my bag and ran. But I was still 7 minutes late. Ethan Ford glanced at his watch and said, "There's a negotiation at 10 o'clock, so we'll make another appointment." My cheeks reddened with anxiety and I chased after him, asking, "When's the next time?" He glanced faintly at Liam. Liam, assistant, understood and took out his itinerary and checked it. It'll have to be next year. Isn't this clearly bullying people? He said it would be 6 months, but it's been 3 years. What kind of status is he in the end? It feels like the President of the United States is not as busy as he is. Why don't you call me once a week to confirm? Liam, assistant, saw me on the verge of tears, did not have the heart to give me a ray of hope. Occasionally, there will be times when the trip is cancelled that, well, this time, I did oversleep, and I can't blame anyone. Next time. Ethan Ford gave me a reassuring look and got into the car, stood in front of City Hall and watched him leave. Every weekend after that, I would call Ethan Ford to confirm the time. The answer I got was always that there were no schedule changes. Just when I was about to give up, finally, Ethan Ford relented, that he had a golf date on Thursday and if it ended early, he would divorce me. I took off work early and spent that day waiting for Ethan Ford to call. It was dark, and instead of Ethan Ford's call, I got a drunk. When Liam, assistant, called to ask me to pick up his boss from City Hall, I was editing a text message to scold Ethan Ford for not keeping his word. Ms. Sue, our boss is drunk and has to argue about divorcing you. I can't talk him out of it, so come and do something. I looked out the dark window. It's this time of the day. City Hall got off work early. He wants a divorce. Can't he do it earlier? Although I don't understand. I still took a taxi and rushed over. In front of City Hall, Ethan Ford, dressed in a black suit, was sitting quietly in front of the main door. Standing next to him was Liam, assistant, who had a helpless look on his face. Seeing me, Liam, assistant, seemed to see a savior, striding towards me. Ms. Sue, please help me persuade him. I glanced at Ethan Ford on the ground, only saw that he had a dark gaze and a proper expression. He really didn't look like he was drunk. Walked over, squatted down, and tentatively asked, "Do you know who I am?" Ethan Ford nodded. "My wife." Didn't seem to be a problem. "Let's go home first, okay?" I glanced at Liam, assistant, and coaxed in a low voice. No. Ethan Ford glared at Liam, assistant, and hiccuped, "I can't miss my divorce appointment today." That's a bit of a conscience thing to say. I lowered my eyes and noticed that his cheeks were rosy and he actually looked that cute. I shook my head and hurriedly snapped myself out of his beauty. "City Hall is closed. Can we leave some other time?" Ethan Ford was stunned for a moment and looked up at me, drunkenly asking, "What day is it?" I looked at Liam, assistant. Liam, assistant, rolled his eyes helplessly and slid his cell phone a few times. "Boss, you're already booked for next April. Come on, it's only August." Suddenly want to curse, Ethan Ford asks miserably, "Can it wait?" "No." I almost grit my teeth. She said it couldn't wait. Ethan Ford hangs his head in disappointment. Liam, assistant, sighed. Ms. Sue, our boss is always drunk and out of it, so why don't you try to coax him out of it? I promise I'll do my best to make some time for you to leave early. April is April. I gritted my teeth and endured, even if I sat here with him until dawn. City Hall is closed tomorrow, Saturday. Besides, he has a lot of plans for tomorrow. It's not worth it to feed the mosquitoes here all night for nothing. Boss, you heard it. Ms. Sue said it can wait. Liam, assistant, reported hurriedly. Ethan Ford nodded and slowly got up from the ground. Then we'll come back in 8 months. Doesn't that make sense? I wondered for a moment if he was pretending to be drunk, but then again, I didn't think so. After all, such a big boss, and I have been licensed for so long, do not want money and sex. What's in it for him to tie me up and not divorce me? Guess he's really busy. Liam, assistant, went to drive the car. Ethan Ford and I stood in front of City Hall and waited. When the car pulled up, Ethan Ford politely opened the door and said, "He'll give you a ride." Didn't refuse. It's late, so it's safer to have a ride. When I got into the car, I gave my address and looked out the window. Ethan Ford rested with his eyes closed. The smell of alcohol was strong and pungent in the air, and I wondered how much Head had to drink. When we got to the bottom of the block, Liam, assistant, parked the car. As soon as I stepped out of the car, Ethan Ford followed me. He was afraid that it was not safe for me to be a girl, so he wanted to walk me downstairs, but he followed me all the way to the elevator, all the way to my door. I finally realized something was wrong. Mr. Fu, thank you for taking me home. I patiently reminded him that it was time to go back to his house. Ethan Ford wondered, aren't we family now? Good thinking. I blushed red with annoyance. Why does this guy act like a different person when he's drunk? He's so dumb and clingy. Ethan Ford once again turned his aggrieved gaze on Liam, assistant. Liam, assistant, coughed darkly. Ms. Sue, my boss breaks down when he gets drunk. Why don't you take in for a night? I kind of want to curse, but still maintained the most basic politeness. Since he will break his movie, it's okay if I don't take in and stay a right. I purposely cooled down my face, picked up the key in my bag and prepared to open the door. As soon as the key was inserted into the hole, Ethan Ford pressed down on my hand. My heart thumped. It felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. Let go, I reprimanded, keeping my head down. Ethan Ford's deep. Outside the house, a man in a suit stood in the doorway and I recognized him. It was in his presence that Ethan Ford and I signed our marriage agreement 3 years ago. Here this time to finalize our divorce. It seems that Liam, assistant, has more credibility than his family's boss. Opened the door and let Vincent, lawyer, in. Ms. So, here is an agreement that Mr. Fu asked me to forward to you. Vincent, lawyer, just sat down for a short while and took out a document from his briefcase. I took it and glanced at it. It was about Ethan Ford's personal property list. After only a few lines, I was dizzy. Put the document down. What does any of this have to do with me? I remembered that we did a property division before we got our license. In other words, Ethan Ford's personal income before and after the marriage is irrelevant to me. The property agreement that Miss Sue signed with Mr. Ford in the first place only binds her to the division of property for 6 months after the marriage. I understand the rest of what Vincent, lawyer, said without saying it. In other words, we should have divorced within 6 months, but because of some negligence, 6 months became 3 years. The extra 2.5 years are not bound by the previous agreement. I don't have to. I handed the papers back to Vincent, lawyer. Whatever we agreed before is fine. Didn't fulfill my conjugal duties for the past 3 years, so there's no reason for me to take half of his hard-earned money. Are you sure you don't want it? Vincent, lawyer, looked at me with surprise. I shook my head. I really don't want it. Vincent, lawyer, teased. Do you know how much money you're giving up? $5 million? Although Ethan Ford is a boss in size, the car he drives is only a Lexus with a price tag of around $300,000, is as busy as a gyroscope every day, not because he can't afford to hire a professional manager. The smaller the company, the harder it is to make money at Ms. Sue is a good joker. Vincent, lawyer, smiled and stood up. Since you don't want anything, I'll go back and make a new agreement. Okay, what's so complicated about a divorce? Can't we just get a stamp from City Hall? He didn't say it would be that much trouble before. I sent Vincent, lawyer, out and was thinking about whether I should find a lawyer to consult with him. Ethan Ford's call came first, picked it up in a hurry, and the person I spoke to was Liam, assistant. Ms. Sue, our boss is in a meeting and he has something that he wants me to clarify. What does he want to clarify? The boss said, who's the $5 million insult? I was confused. That too much or too little? No matter how much, I've just made it clear to Vincent, lawyer, that I don't want a penny. Cough. Liam, assistant, didn't wait for my response and continued, Ms. Sue, our boss thinks that you lack the most basic knowledge about him, and I hope that in this period of time before the divorce you can do your homework. Is there something wrong with my reading comprehension? Why is it that I didn't understand a word he said? Above, him just relaying the boss instructions, and I hope MS.SO understands the helplessness of the workers. Liam, assistant, added one more sentence, and then no longer gave me time to respond and hung up the phone. Stared at the phone for half a day. It took me half a day to stare at the phone before my brain slowly turned the corner. He was thinking that $5 million was too little. It is an insult to his ability to make money. He also asked me to do my homework to understand him, so that I can publicize that my ex-husband is the boss of the XXX Group. Hey, the vanity of the tycoon, although I don't understand it. As long as I can get divorced, it's not something I can't fulfill. I sat down on the sofa and used my cell phone to search for Ethan Ford's name. The words you searched for involve personal privacy and will not be displayed. What the hell? I was shocked. It was the first time I knew that Baidu also protects personal privacy. I tried my own name again. As a result, the non-mainstream photos I posted in my QQ space 7 years ago could be searched. Not to mention a bunch of people with the same name as mine. Why is Ethan Ford protected? What is his identity? As I was wondering, my girlfriend Jessica Song's voice called Zoe. Lucas Hahn is back, and he's inviting everyone to dinner at the Ritz-Carlton tonight. Lucas Hahn. I froze for a moment. How long has it been since I heard that name? No. I hadn't seen him in 7 years. I'd almost forgotten he existed. Come on, he asked me about you, Jessica Song begged as she pampered herself. Why is he asking about me? I was somehow nervous. I guess he's still interested in you. Jessica Song gossiped. I frowned and interrupted unhappily. Jessica Song. Okay, I won't say it anymore. Jessica Song knew that she was in the wrong and asked weakly, are you sure you don't want to go? No, I flatly refused and hung up. In the evening, Jessica Song sent me photos of the reunion. There were more than a dozen people, but I still recognized Lucas Hahn at once. Having shed his youthful arrogance, he looked more mature and handsome. How is it? Do you feel it? Jessica Song asked and then sent a single photo of him, slightly sideways, chatting with a classmate. Jessica Song should have taken the picture when he was not paying attention. Was a bit speechless and sent back a message, I'm going to eat. With that, I threw my cell phone aside, made dinner myself. 3 dishes and 1 soup is a bit extravagant for one person. Cooking can make me emotionally peaceful. Whenever I have something on my mind and my mood is not high, I will cook a table for myself. Just put the food on the table, ready to treat yourself. The doorbell rang. Open the door. Ethan Ford was standing outside the door with a tired look on his face. Excuse me then. Lucas Hahn winked at me with a leathery smile. Almost couldn't hold back and went up to swing at him. Luckily, Ethan Ford squeezed my hand. Lucas Hahn just waltzes in, looks at the remnants of what's left on the table, wrinkles his nose slightly, and asks, so this is a casual meal? Ethan Ford takes a seat at the table and picks up the card he handed me earlier and pushes it over. There's 50 million here. Stop pestering my wife. What's wrong with you? Lucas Hahn was shocked. I was even more shocked and immediately grabbed the card and rubbed it hard. You don't have a fever, do you? He is a small boss who owns a Lexus, and he is asking for $50 million in his mouth. This is too big of a lie, right? Moreover, he may not know Lucas Hahn well. He's the crown prince of Hahn Corporation. Mr. Hahn married 7 wives and gave birth to only 1 baby. When he was in high school, his monthly allowance was in the tens of millions. Would he lack this $50 million? What's more, he's obviously swollen face swindle who was sure enough. Lucas Hahn smiled gruesomely, glanced at the bank card on the table and said, I'll pay $100 million for your divorce. I'm speechless. Jessica Song was dumbfounded, probably not expecting the plot to take such a ridiculous turn. Tugging on the skirt of my dress, she asked in a low voice, are they talking about Vietnamese dong? Or, maybe. I said not very sure. Jessica Song was instantly relieved, scared the shit out of me. Just a moment ago, you were almost worth over $100 million. Lucas Hahn's gaze was like a knife. Jessica Song was so scared that she went back to hiding behind me. Ethan Ford smiled calmly. You want to buy my wife for $100 million? Who are you looking down on? How much do you want? Lucas Hahn asked with a cold face. Money was the last thing on his mind. $580 billion. Ethan Ford paused and opened his lips. Dollars. After saying that, He glanced at Jessica Song and I without thinking. I was speechless. This cowhide, why don't you go to heaven? Lucas Hahn's face became thoroughly ugly, gritting his teeth and snarling lowly, the figure you said a billionaire may not be able to get it out. Ethan Ford's gaze is cold, his tone is very sure, he can get it out. Lucas Hahn snorted coldly, even if he can get it out, will he spend such a big price for a woman? What's more, that so-called billionaire has never met anyone. He might be an old man who is half buried in the ground. How could he spend so much money to pursue a married woman? If you want do it yourself, how do you know he won't? Ethan Ford's cool eyes, instantly cold like a sharp knife, stabbed Lucas Hahn. This is the first time I have seen Lucas Hahn show an expression of near shame in front of me. Mr. Hahn, take this card and go. Ethan Ford lightly slipped the card into Lucas Hahn's jacket pocket, then pulled the door open and made a please gesture. What I didn't expect was for Lucas Hahn to actually leave, but before he left he threw the card on the floor, pulling the corner of his mouth to mock. $50 million, and you want me to quit? Who are you looking down on, knowing 3 is 3? Ethan Ford hooked his lips. The Hahn family really has a good family style. You're so toxic. After Lucas Hahn left, Jessica Song also left with a sad face. Once again, only the two of us were left in the house. Ethan Ford took the initiative to clean up the dishes, and I hurriedly asked him to take a break. Your time is charged by the second. I'd better do it. Didn't dare to let him do the dishes, for fear that he would suddenly ask me to pay him for his labor. Said Ethan Ford. Okay. He didn't push back and directly left to watch TV in the living room. Sighed and thought to myself, I'm afraid this man is not crazy about money. A random card is worth $50 million, and he still drives a Lexus that costs more than $300,000? I was just a toy that he bet with his friends. It takes a month to woo Sophia. Who are you looking down on? Let's make a bet. In less than 3 days, I can make her call her husband. I can't describe how I felt when I first heard that. Stood trembling on the rooftop as Chi Fei held the recorder and sneered at me with a contemptuous face. Sophia, don't rely on the fact that you have some good looks and think that a heavenly boy like Lucas Hahn will really look at you. Don't think that just because you get to go to the same high school as us, you'll be able to fly up the ladder. Don't believe in this bullshit about being subsidized by rich people. In my eyes, you're just an innocent-looking bitch. That's how Lucas Hahn described you to me. After she finished her speech, she walked away with her head held high, was frozen in place, unable to calm down for a long time. It turned out that Lucas Hahn's gestures of goodwill and courting in the past 2 days were all fake. Although I have long been on guard and did not waver, but being pointed out in such an undisguised manner, I felt that my dignity had been trampled into the dirt. After that, Lucas Hahn stalked me for some time. I was not moved in the least. Became more and more high profile when he got annoyed, became the public enemy of almost all the girls in the school. In order to continue studying quietly, I could only apply for withdrawal. Only before my withdrawal application was approved, Lucas Hahn withdrew first, transferred to another international private high school. Not long after, Chi Fei also dropped out. Some of her classmates said that her family's business went bankrupt and she couldn't afford to pay the tuition, so she transferred to a regular high school. However, although Lucas Hahn dropped out of school, his pestering of me did not end. From time to time there are still some small gestures, but not going to the same school, not many chances to see each other. Put up with it later. He stomped out the cigarette in his hand and took a big step towards me. Instinctively, I tried to turn and run away, but he called me by name. You don't like me that much? I paused and slowly turned sideways to look at him face to face. After not seeing him for 7 years, he had indeed grown up and matured quite a bit, and his originally handsome features looked even more three-dimensional and refined. That kind of cool and draggy arrogance on his body is much less. But the embarrassment and hurt he brought to me did not diminish with the passage of time. 10 years, Sophia, I've liked you for 10 whole years. The way he looked at me suddenly became fierce. Oh. I hung my head, having no desire to speak. Since high school, his liking for me had been nothing but embarrassing and humiliating. 3 years ago, he returned home once. At the time, I avoided seeing him. When he came home, he didn't know what to say. It wasn't long before his mom found me. She gave me a check for $2 million and hired me to fall in love with her son. She also said she could arrange for me to go to graduate school at a top American institution. She said the Hahn family is rich enough that they don't need a marriage to consolidate their wealth, and they have no requirements for their future daughter-in-law's family lineage. Their son liked it, they liked it. That was the first time I had ever heard someone talk about the sale of love in such a refreshingly unassuming way. seeing that I didn't agree. Mrs. Han got angry and directly threatened that she could keep me from graduating. Not I long. I participated in the internship unit. Suddenly reflected to the school I misbehaved. On the internet, some so-called informants even appeared, saying that I was adopted by a rich businessman when I was in high school. Also said that I will revenge, in order to a little demolition money, will be raised from childhood uncle to the court. For a while, countless bad comments came to me. That period of time was the darkest moment of my life, when I had an emotional breakdown. I even thought of death. Ethan Ford appeared at that time. He took me to see the head of the school and told me to make everything clear. Also met with Lucas Han's mother and secretly filmed her threatening me. The internship offered me an apology for this and cleared up the misunderstanding with the school, even the demolition money of my parents' old house. He also helped me get it back when I was constantly pestered, splashed with dirty water and abused by uncle's family. He firmly held my hand and said, "My Ethan Ford's wife, no one will bully." Why that time we were licensed, witnessed by Ethan Ford grandmother. We went to City Hall, took wedding photos, and exchanged rings. It was all fake, but it was so real it was scary. Then grandmother passed away. Ethan Ford got busy with work and I went back to school to deal with graduation-related matters. Combined with the emotional downturn and depression, I started to look for a job while cooperating with my doctor's treatment. Finally, with Jessica Song by my side, I slowly came out of the haze, and Ethan Ford agreed to make time for a divorce. Lucas Han appeared again. "It's been 10 years, you're a rock. It's about time you had a temperature." His eyes and tone were mixed with too much dissatisfaction and aggression. It made me feel a bit ridiculous. "Why, husband is still waiting for me at home." I lowered my head and prepared to walk down the hallway. "Why?" Lucas Han asked as he pulled me back. I looked up, stunned for a moment. He looked at me unwillingly. "Just because I said that, so no matter what I do, you won't look at me with a straight face anymore, right? You let go first." I was a little nervous. Prisons can still commute prisoners' sentences. How come when it comes to you, Sophia, I can only be sentenced to death? "Why?" Lucas Han looked at me angrily, and the stoicism in his voice made me instantly panic. This guy is capable of anything once he loses control. I've already seen his lawlessness in high school. "Lucas Han, let go of me first," I warned in panic. Lucas Han squeezed my hand and placed it towards his chest with a gloomy expression and asked, "Can't you really feel my heart for you? Let go of me." I struggled. "Let her go." I was very surprised to see Ethan Ford walking over with a gloomy face. "Didn't he say he was flying to the US today for business? Why is he here?" Ethan Ford pulled over my hand and freed me from Lucas Han's shackles, and also wrapped his arms around my waist in the process. The man's wide, warm embrace made me instinctively want to break away. Ethan Ford saw this and wrapped his arms tighter, didn't dare to move anymore. The man's warm breath brushed against my ear. "Mr. Han, are you regretting not asking for the $50 million? I was a bit speechless. Why did this $50 million come up again? Is he crazy about money? Lucas Han doesn't care about this small amount of money that as expected. Lucas Han was enraged and raised his voice. "Sophia is priceless in my heart." Ethan Ford laughed and turned to me. "If I give you $100 million, will you divorce me?" In front of Lucas Han, it had to be no divorce. "No, you see, I am priceless in my wife's heart, too." Lucas Han's face reddened with anger, and his eyes looked at me grudgingly. "This man who talks about money, what do you see in him?" He was very puzzled. "Handsome, I guess." I said. Lucas Han shut up. Although he was a self-proclaimed schoolboy back then, his face value was really not enough to look at in front of Ethan Ford. Ethan Ford's handsomeness is a kind of handsomeness that breaks through the skin and radiates from the inside out. When I first met him, I didn't even dare to look at him squarely for fear that I would fall in by accident. Even now, every time I am alone with him, my little heart can beat wildly. An ordinary handsome guy like Lucas Han can only serve as a backdrop in front of him. "Can't imagine that you are such a shallow woman." Although he didn't say it out loud, I read the words from his eyes. "It's getting late. We couples have to go home and be gracious, so I won't invite you upstairs." Before Ethan Ford could finish his sentence, Lucas Han's face turned green. I was happy to see Lucas Han being defeated, but husband and wife love, why does it sound a bit impure? Am I thinking too dirty? Ethan Ford didn't give me much time to think about it and led me towards the hallway, not caring if Lucas Han gets pissed off. Once inside the elevator, I forcefully broke away from his arms. Aren't you flying to America today?" I had to find something to say to hide my embarrassment. Fu Huai nodded. "Business was taken. What? The Han family robbed it." Ethan Ford says it hard. I couldn't even pretend I didn't hear it. "Losses. How much?" To be honest, I felt guilty. I didn't think that the rich Han family would make things difficult for a small business owner, quite a lot. Ethan Ford frowned and thought about it, conservatively estimated billions. Oh. I instantly stopped feeling guilty. He was bragging again. Does a man with billions of dollars drive a Lexus? I don't believe him. Are you not busy tomorrow? I went to the US for business before, so I'm sure I'll be gone for a few days. Now that I'm not going, can I get a divorce? I'm too upset to get a divorce. When the elevator arrived, Ethan Ford took the lead and walked out, froze for a moment, but followed. Out of politeness, I invited him inside. Ethan Ford breezed in and sat down on the couch in the living room, and I asked a little formally, "Wanna watch TV?" "Watching you." He cupped his hands on the back of his head and half leaned back on the back of the couch, his eyes boring into me, and my face instantly turned red. All I could do was turn around and go into the kitchen and pour 2 glasses of lemonade. After taking a few deep breaths, I handed him a glass of lemonade. Didn't take it. A little embarrassed, I put it on the coffee table in front of the couch and tried. "Look, it's getting late. Why don't you?" "Sophia," Ethan Ford interrupted directly. "Have you thought about what you're going to do once we get divorced and Lucas Han finds out and comes back to haunt us?" Huh? I froze for a moment. To be honest, Lucas Han's appearance was so sudden that I didn't even have time to think about it. The rejection and resistance to him was carved into my bones and blood. I just refused and dodged by instinct. I didn't think about the consequences. "I'll take care of it." After a brief moment of disorientation, I cast a determined look at Ethan Ford. Was no longer the poor student who hadn't been beaten by society 3 years ago. 3 years is enough for a person to learn to be brave. Looking at my resolute expression, Ethan Ford let out a long sigh. "Didn't it ever occur to you that there was another possibility?" His voice was a little helpless, with a hint of favor. "What possibility?" I stammered a little, not quite understanding what Ethan Ford meant. "The possibility of not getting divorced." Ethan Ford finished and let out another sigh. This time I did understand, but I was greatly shocked. Why? It was clear that we had agreed to get divorced in 6 months, even though it had dragged on for 3 years before it was on the agenda. But in those 3 years, there was almost zero contact between us. During this time, both of us have also been working together for an early divorce. How can we say we're not divorced? Where's the why in the adult world? Ethan Ford's eyes flickered for a moment. Then he stood up and said, "Marriage is sacred. We shouldn't have treated her so rashly." Huh? What's with the hard turn of phrase? Didn't give me time to respond and continued, "You know there's a cooling off period for divorce now." "Yes, I know." My brain was a little stuck, not quite understanding the central idea in his words. "You see, the country is advising us to be calm. We have to be patriotic." What's with the love of country again? So getting divorced now is about the same as being unpatriotic? I looked at him in shock. Ethan Ford blushed a little, but nodded firmly, stood up, picked up the lemonade from the coffee table, and poured it into the kitchen sink. Ethan Ford followed. Without a word, I washed the glass. Mentally, I cursed myself for being incredibly stupid, when in fact, I should have thought of it long before he delayed the divorce the first time. This man beside me, there is no sincerity of divorce. Otherwise, how can anyone be busy like this? There are so many rich people in the world. Let's not talk about the distant ones. Just take Lucas Han's father for example. He got married and divorced and got married. He's been through this 7 times, but he didn't say he didn't have enough time. He's a small business owner who owns a Lexus. He can't be busier than Lucas Han's dad. Doesn't have time to get divorced, but he's very active in getting a card. After washing the cups, I re-wiped the counter. Ethan Ford watched quietly from the sidelines. After I did all this in silence, he grabbed the rag from my hand and asked, "Is that how you want to divorce me?" It was agreed upon. He interrupts out of the blue and asks, "Do you have a favorite?" "No." "Then let's look around." I was surprised. Ethan Ford sighs. "Since you don't have a favorite, why don't you try liking me?" "Why, what? We're a couple," Ethan Ford said, looking at me with a serious look in his eyes. "We're supposed to like each other, aren't we?" It sounded reasonable, but something didn't feel right. "It's only for a month. And if you still insist on a divorce, you'll have Liam, assistant, put it on the calendar." After Ethan Ford left, I lay in bed, stayed up all night, tossing and turning, wondering what Ethan Ford meant by mutual liking. Did he mean that he liked me? But who likes someone and doesn't contact them for 3 years? And this time, if I hadn't taken the initiative to contact him about the divorce, he would have been too busy to even think about who I was. The next day, I went to work with a big black eye. When my colleague Xiaozhua saw me, he said mysteriously, "Zoe, I bumped into the legendary big boss today, super handsome." She was so excited that her face turned red. How handsome is this to excite a little girl like this? Suddenly, Ethan Ford's stunningly handsome face came to mind. Smiled and shook my head thinking, how can you be more handsome than Ethan Ford? I couldn't, let me tell you. All the male celebrities combined are not half as handsome as Big Boss. Xiao Zhuo continued to share his handsome points. Sophia, come here. Director Song's appearance interrupted the conversation. Xiao Zhuo shrank his head and returned to his workstation. While I put down my work and went to the director's office. As soon as I entered the office, I was dumbfounded. Why are you here? I regretted it right after I asked, because I associated it with Xiao Zhuo's words and instantly figured it out. The big boss of the company is most likely Ethan Ford. Ethan Ford smiled and extended his hand towards me. Sophia, I'm glad you're getting to know me again. I didn't feel very happy. The staff cafeteria, Ethan Ford and I sat face to face. 3 years ago, I thought this company had potential and invested in it. Ethan Ford explained lightly, and my expression was calm, but my heart was complicated. 3 years ago, not long after I joined the company, the personnel suddenly interviewed me. The general idea was that the company couldn't hold on any longer and was going to lay off employees. The next day, I came to the company to sign the compensation agreement, and the personnel suddenly said no layoffs. She said that a big boss had invested $500 million in the company, and she thought that the company could still survive for a while. This period lasted for 3 years. During the 3 years, the mysterious investor slowly became the actual controller of the company through additional funds. The mysterious investor also became the big boss, as everyone said. Now this big boss suddenly became my nominal husband. Who would dare to believe it? Besides, it's just too much of a coincidence. Is there nothing you want to ask? Ethan Ford was calm and collected, his smile unobtrusive. Is it because of me? I asked hesitantly. Yes, he actually just admitted it. Why oh why? I sucked in my breath in disbelief. Because you were sensitive, depressed, and self-loathing back then, and I didn't want to see you shrink back into your turtle shell for a job. Ethan Ford's voice was strong, and his eyes held an emotion I didn't dare look into. I was so panicked that my fingers trembled involuntarily. It was like going back 3 years again. During that dark time, Ethan Ford was the only light that kept me alive. Only that light left later. Could only force myself to learn to grope my way through the darkness. Now, that light has returned, and he says he never left to walk with me. With trembling fingertips, I ran them through the broken hair on my forehead. Taking a deep breath, I said, Ethan Ford. It was the first time I'd called him by his full name in 3 years. He answered softly, his gaze sullen as he looked at me, returned his gaze calmly and said, I don't need you anymore. Now, I know. Ethan Ford was silent. It was a long time before he said, almost choking, my girl, finally growing up. I gave him a surprised look. He looked away from me, obviously didn't want to continue this topic. The company gave me the afternoon off. Fu Huai asked me if I wanted to go see grandmother. Didn't refuse. Ethan Ford grandmother's grave. In fact, I will go to pay my respects every year. In the last part of her life, she gave me all her love and warmth. It was the first time since my parents passed away that someone loved and tolerated me unconditionally. Tea wasn't mixed with any calculations of interest. After seeing grandmother, Ethan Ford took a phone call and left. Looking at his back as he hurriedly left, I believed for the first time that divorcing him would allow him to share far more than $5 million with me, back home. I sat paralyzed on the sofa and couldn't help but search Ethan Ford's name once again. Still nothing. What a mysterious man. Since Ethan Ford showed up in the company as a big boss, the company prepared an office for him, although he doesn't come to the office often. But occasionally he would come over to inspect the work, and every time he came, he would call me into the office to cultivate the relationship. Is so not avoiding suspicion. Gossip naturally flies all over the place. There are saying that I am his underground lover. Some said that I was a distant cousin of his. Even more outrageous, said I was his eyes arranged in the company, in order to monitor everyone to work properly. The rumor spread further. We could make a movie called Infernal Affairs. Finally protested. Can you keep a low profile? How can you keep a low profile when you're chasing your wife? Ethan Ford frowned in disapproval. I was speechless. He chasing his wife by calling me into his office to report on his work. The company is gossiping. I protested in a small voice. The word keeps spreading like this. I won't even have the face to stay in the company anymore. You could just tell them we're a couple. Ethan Ford said. I glared at him in annoyance. If you're thin-skinned, I can do it for you. Don't. I hastened to stop. And I had gotten our license, but I hadn't thought about whether or not I was going to continue the engagement with him in a month. What if by then we're divorced? Won't people have to talk about it even more? Ethan Ford looked at me quietly for a few seconds and asked, "Do you hate me a lot?" I shook my head, a little confused as to why he was asking. "If you don't hate it, why don't you try to take it a step further with me?" He walked over and sighed. I instinctively took a step back, looking up at Ethan Ford's breathtakingly handsome face. After a long moment of hesitation, I asked, "So, do you like me?" "I like you." Ethan Ford's tone was firm. "What do you like about me?" Although during this period of time, I had already vaguely sensed that he had unusual feelings for me, but I couldn't believe that he actually admitted it to my face, all of it. He pressed his hands on my shoulders and his dark eyes fell on my face. I felt my breath stop. His eyes held a mind-blowing heat, unabashedly releasing intense passion, instantly forget all resistance, until his hands slid down to my waist, trapping me hard in his arms. My ear was pressed against his chest, and the heartbeat that sounded like an eruption of lava was clear and intense. My nervousness, however, miraculously calmed. He wasn't lying to me, he was fond of me and suddenly believed it at the moment. A favorite heartbeat doesn't lie. From Ethan Ford's office, IT was close to the end of the day. My coworkers were looking at me with different expressions. Forcefully calmly sat down in front of the desk, but my legs are a little soft. Xiao Zhua gossiped over and said, "Zoe, there is a handsome man waiting for you at the front desk." A handsome man. I panicked for some reason and instantly thought of Lucas Hahn. He wouldn't be dead yet, would he? I hesitated to go out and meet him. Ethan Ford walked out first. I hurriedly followed him. When I reached the front desk, I was finally relieved when I saw the person. It wasn't Lucas Hahn, it was Alexiu Brothershin. "Why are you here?" Alexiu looked at Ethan Ford with surprise. Ethan Ford looked at him indifferently and he shrunk his head in fear, not daring to open his mouth again. I gave him and Ethan Ford a strange look, suppressing the doubts in my heart. I asked, "Xiao, how is something wrong?" Alexiu was the child of my elementary school homeroom teacher, Mrs. Lin, and was 3 years younger than me. When I was 9 years old, my parents passed away due to an accident, and Uncle's mother became my legal guardians. As soon as I graduated from elementary school, Uncle's mother contacted a local black factory so that I could earn money to subsidize my family. It was Ms. Lin who found me, and she took me to Uncle's home to rescue me from that suffocating environment. She helped me reconnect with the school and organized donations for me from the teachers and students of the school to solve my food and housing problems. Sometimes, I would think that if Mr. Lin hadn't found me back then, Sophia now would be hiding in some dark corner, waiting to slowly rot. Over the years, I broke contact with a lot of people, but whenever there was a New Year's holiday, Mr. Lin would always call me to have dinner at home. Over time, Alexiu and I also became friends, only I didn't expect that he knew Ethan Ford as well. Couldn't help but look at Ethan Ford again. "And why Mom wants you to come over for dinner on Saturday?" Alexiu said. "Got it." I agreed with alacrity. Not long from now, it would be Ms. Lin's 50th birthday. Was thinking of taking the time to visit her in the next few days and find out more about the mysterious person who sponsored me back then. "I've brought my message, so I'll go back first." Alexiu looked at me and said. I sent him to the elevator entrance, and he waved at me, and then waved at Ethan Ford. "Goodbye, Brothershin." After sending Alexiu away, I turned to Ethan Ford. "Aren't you going to explain?" "Explain what?" Ethan Ford was surprised. "You and Alexiu. His mom was my elementary school homeroom teacher. What kind of magical destiny is this, to have shared the same homeroom teacher?" It was Saturday. I went to Mr. Lin's house with my gifts. After dinner, I once again asked Ms. Lin for information about her sponsor. Back then, I didn't do well in the midterm, and I thought I could only go to an ordinary high school. As a result, one of the best international private high schools in our area threw an olive branch to me, not only promised me free tuition and fees, but also gave me $1,000 a month for living expenses. At first, I thought the school was interested in my past grades, but after I enrolled in school, I realized how stupid my thoughts were. There are only 2 types of students who can be admitted to that high school, either good enough or rich enough. Was neither good enough nor rich enough, so I became the only outlier in the school. Later, Lucas Hahn chased me, and I learned from others that I was sponsored, and Ms. Lin knew from the beginning about the sponsor, but chose to hide it. This time, she still refused to say anything, only said that the person who sponsored me was very low-key and would sponsor hundreds of children like me every year. Let me not be too concerned. She also asked me about my life events. Inexplicably, I thought of Ethan Ford, thought that he was once one of Ms. Lin's students, so maybe she had a picture of him as a child at home. All the photos of the graduates that Mr. Lin had taken were put in a big album, which was in the cabinet in the study. After Mr. Lin left, I pulled the album out of the cabinet. I flipped through it page by page. Suddenly a graduation photo of the class of 2004 caught my eye. There was a very handsome tall boy in the last row who looked very familiar. I pulled out the photo and found the name that corresponded to his position, Ethan Ford, young name. A name so old that I had almost forgotten it. After leaving Mr. Lin's house, it took me almost 3 days to accept the fact that Ethan Ford, young name, could be Ethan Ford. Still can't find any information about Ethan Ford on the internet. But there is a lot about Ethan Ford, young name. The awards he won as a young man, the honorary events he attended, the pictures he took with some big shot, none of it brings back memories of the summer of 2005 year. Uncle Sue passed away after a long illness, and Ethan Ford, young name, had no one to take care of him, and why Dad took him home. Was happy to finally spend time with my favorite big brother, but 13-year-old Ethan Ford, young name, was brooding, rebellious, and stubborn at time and again. My dad pulled him away from the game room, the pool room, the internet cafe, and other entertainment venues. Heard him say in a cynical tone, "What do you care? Just get the first grade." And why Dad hit him for the first time. Was so scared that I closed the door to my room tightly, and the sound of smashing came from the living room. Crackling, calm was not restored until the sound of the door being flung open. That night, I slept poorly. In the middle of the night, the door opened. I snuck out and ran right into a bruised and swollen Ethan Ford, young name. "Don't be afraid," he said. I pursed my lips, looked at the injuries on his body and lowered my head in shame. "Yeah, I'm sorry." I apologized for my dad's violence. Ethan Ford, young name, looked at me quietly and smiled wistfully. "Fool. Your dad doesn't have the skills to beat me up like that." I went to his room with a pillbox and helped him with his medicine, told me in graphic detail about a confrontation he had with a group of punks at an internet cafe, was shocked to hear this and asked in disbelief, "Why did you get into a fight?" Ethan Ford, young name, froze for a moment, then rubbed my head and said, "I don't have a dad anymore." I didn't understand what not having a dad had to do with fighting. It wasn't until 2 years later that I lost both parents and became an orphan. Suddenly I understood the pain behind Ethan Ford's, young name, words. Ethan Ford, young name, stayed at my house for a year. Ethan Ford, young name, stayed at my house for a year and was picked up by his grandmother, but came back to visit me from time to time, bought me ice cream and taught me how to play video games. When I think of it now, that time was the last joy of my childhood. Later, his mother in the United States finally completed the formalities and took him to the United States. The day he left, I didn't go to see him off, hid under the covers and cried for a long time. Why Dad said that Ethan Ford, young name, was disappointed that he didn't see me at the airport, but still left me a cell phone number. He told me to call him if I missed him. I locked the piece of paper with his cell phone number on it into my journal. From the drawer, I found the diary. The writing on that piece of paper was still visible. I dialed the number on my cell phone. "Sophia." The familiar voice came into my ears and I couldn't contain my trembling any longer. "I'm sorry," he said. I clenched my teeth and hung up silently. 16 years ago, had dialed this number over and over again in front of all the police officers at the police station. I told them I wasn't an orphan and that I had a brother. But the call was never answered. The Uncle family became my legal guardians. They took all the compensation money and occupied my house, turned me from a host to a poor parasite. When my cousin moved into my bedroom, he said to me in a mocking tone, "Sophia, don't be naive. That Ethan Ford, young name, is not your real brother at all. He doesn't give a damn about you." I didn't believe him and jumped on him, pressed me to the ground, grabbed me by the hair and scolded. "If it wasn't for my father and mother, you would have been sent to an orphanage by now. Ungrateful fool." My cousin and my sister found every dress in my closet and tried them on over and over again in front of me. They said that children without parents had no right to wear these beautiful clothes. My childhood ended that summer. Along with my memories of Ethan Ford, young name, they were buried. Late at night, I was awakened by a knock on the door. Ethan Ford was standing outside the door, was wearing an out-of-place black coat and his forehead was densely sweaty. "Just got off the plane," he explains as he takes off his coat, then remembered that 3 days ago, he said he was going to Australia on business. How urgent was this? He didn't even have time to change his clothes. I took a pair of slippers out of the shoe cabinet and poured him a glass of cold white water. "Sophia," he called out to me, who was pretending to be busy. I paused. To be honest, I was a little embarrassed after realizing that Ethan Ford was my Ethan Ford, young name, brother. Didn't know how to face him. As a young boy, I had hated him when I was bullied by the Uncle family. But as I grew older, I realized it was unjustified, was only 15 years old at the time, and even if he knew about my situation, he couldn't do anything about it. What's more, he didn't know anything at all. He looked at me silently, his eyes a mixture of emotions I couldn't describe, and moved my lips, wanting to tell him that I had stopped being mad at him a long time ago. It was just in character, and it left me a bit at a loss for words. Instead, he pulled down his pants right in front of me. I was so scared that I immediately closed my eyes. What are you doing? What time is this? He can't be trying to find me to fulfill my conjugal duties. After he finished taking off his pants, he took off his top. Although I covered my eyes with both hands, I still couldn't hold back and forked a finger crack to secretly look at this look. I was shocked. Ethan Ford's body, his legs, were covered with sinuous, unyielding scars. Some were long, some were shallow. I was too distraught to speak. Ethan Ford puts his clothes back on and slowly walks toward me, freeze in place. He wraps his arms around me hard, his low voice attached to my ear. The second month after I left for America, I was in a car accident, and of the 5 people traveling with me, I was the only one who survived. And the 3 years that followed, I went through 8 surgeries, and whenever I wanted to give up, I told myself that Sophia was still waiting for me at home, and why Mom and Uncle Fu told me about Uncle and Auntie Sue. But I didn't dare to answer your call. I was afraid of disappointing you. Sophia, I'm sorry. Can you forgive that cowardly and selfish Ethan Ford, young name? With that, he buried his face in my hair. The slight choking sound between his breaths made me so sad that I could hardly breathe. It turned out that where I couldn't see, the pain he went through was not less than mine at all. I slowly reached out and hugged him tightly. I'm sorry, I love you, he said. After I recognized Ethan Ford, he confessed everything to me. He graduated from college and went to work for his stepfather's company. His stepfather had no children, so he gave him Ford's last name. When he joined the company, he showed an astonishing talent for business. Within a few years, he had doubled the company's market value several hundred times. Now he is a real billionaire. When I heard the word billionaire, I couldn't hold back and touched his forehead. It was a bit hot. I think he had a fever. Said he was not sick and was in good health, but then he sneezed. It's hot and cold, a cold. Once Ethan Ford caught a cold, he refused to leave. Had no choice but to call Liam, assistant. As a result, Liam, assistant, sent his boss a change of clothes and some daily necessities. Said that his boss was very poor and had not enjoyed the warmth of his family for a long time. Now he is sick and needs love and care. After saying that, he ran. A wimpy bunch. I couldn't even return it if I wanted to. Closing the door, I carried my suitcase into the house, looked at the man who was lying on the sofa watching the news, and asked, how much do you pay Liam, assistant, in January? 50,000. He held out a hand. Less. For such a caring assistant, it should be 100,000 anyhow, dollars. Ethan Ford adds. I kept my mouth shut, almost forgot, he's a billionaire now. Dollar bill. Ethan Ford was sick for 3 days. 3 days later, I called Liam, assistant, to collect the man. Said he was in Southeast Asia talking about a project, and thanked me in passing, saying that his boss listened to me and gave him a raise. Now earns $100,000 a month. Gave an oh-so-sweet answer and didn't really feel anything. Added with some irritation, I also have an end-of-year bonus and dividends. Hung up the phone. I am sure it's not the same kind of person who doesn't work for the same company. Ethan Ford, who earns dollars, has been very idle lately. Every day after work he would ask me for a date. Sometimes spicy hot pot, small hot pot, sometimes a star restaurant package. Under his money attack, I am finally willing to believe that he is really rich. After the divorce, the property divided to me is definitely more than $5 million. So what? Without the divorce, I'm sure he'll get more. A month later, instead of going to City Hall, I moved into his house, and the 3rd month of living together, when I was cleaning, I found a photo of me in my junior high school uniform. Somehow it reminded me of that mysterious sponsor who didn't want to be named. Couldn't help but call Mr. Lin and ask, is the person who sponsored me Ethan Ford, young name? When you went to the factory to look for me, was it also because of Ethan Ford, young name? At that time, he was mobility impaired, so he went to the factory to look for me, was having trouble getting around, so he asked me to find you. This time, Mr. Lin finally didn't hide anything, sat on the sofa for a long time. It turned out that in places I didn't know about, he had silently done so much for me all by himself. Sophia. Ethan Ford came from behind and snatched the rag from my hand with a reproachful look on his face. Isn't there a maid at home? I handed him the photo. He took the photo, glanced at it, and said, "Forget the past." Didn't say anything. He reached out and wrapped his arms around me and said, "Let's go into the future hand in hand, okay? If in the future, I'll always have him by my side. Maybe we can look forward to it. 6 months after moving in together, Ethan Ford offered to make up a wedding. I wanted to refuse, but he said the only way to make me a real Mrs. Ford was to have a wedding. Many people were invited to the wedding. Lucas Hahn was also invited, but he didn't come. Instead, he sent me a long text message. I didn't have much patience to read it, ready to delete it. But Ethan Ford grabbed the phone and read it word for word, that he's been secretly stealing the Hahn family's business lately. Lucas Hahn has been arranged by Mr. Hahn to expand the African market. You won't bother me again. Are you really a billionaire? At this point, I couldn't help but be curious. I am a fake. I don't want to change. I hugged him around the waist. "I'm committed to you, Ethan Ford." Me too. Under the blue night sky, his kisses were like a sea of stars that surrounded me tightly. The one I had waited for 16 years had finally returned. End. Extra. Ethan Ford's perspective. My girl was broken. 3 years after I left. My name is Ethan Ford. Young name. Mom and Dad divorced when I was very young. My mom wanted custody of me. My dad wouldn't give it. She cried and asked me if I wanted to go to America with him. I was 9 years old. Sophia was 3. She took my hand and asked tearfully, "Brother, don't you want to go with Sophia?" I told my mom that I wanted to stay in China and follow my dad. Later, my father passed away. Went to America with my mom. Before I left Sophia my cell phone number in America, but she didn't call me until half a year later. That time, I had just finished the second surgery of my life, didn't even have the strength to speak to why mom took the cell phone and gave me the news that Sophia's parents had died unexpectedly. Tears were falling down the corners of my eyes. Sophia called me many times, but I didn't answer any of them. Didn't want her to worry about me when she was suffering from the loss of her parents. That night, the doctor gave another critical notice and I was admitted to the ICU. I told myself to stay alive. Do everything you can to survive. I died, Sophia would have no one. 3 years later, I was stabilized, returned to China, but I learned that Sophia had dropped out of school to work in a factory. Her thin body dragged dozens of pounds of steel bars. Walking behind a group of adults, her weak and helpless appearance brought tears to my eyes, and my memory, those flexible eyes, but at the moment they were dull. Watched from afar, hands frozen on the armrests of the wheelchair. How do not have the courage to recognize it? I found Mr. Lin, who was my class teacher in elementary school. He also taught Sophia, told her about Sophia's situation, and she immediately reddened her eyes and said she would help. After Sophia's matter was settled, Mr. Lin asked me if I wanted to meet with her. I still backed off. She saw me like this, how sad she would be. Sophia failed the midterm. I took out all my money and sent her to the best private high school. This time, I had just entered my stepfather's company. There was a lot to learn, and I neglected to take care of her, until Mr. Lin called to say that Sophia was dropping out. A boy named Lucas Hahn had been harassing her. There was also a girl named Chi Fei, who badmouthed her at school and said nasty things about her. The Chi family is a very small business. I used just a little bit of tactics and they went bankrupt. The difficult ones were the Han family. Had no choice but to turn to Uncle Fu for help. Uncle Fu said he could help me, but I had to take his name and inherit the family business. I agreed, and why life was saved by his money. I would give him my life, not to mention taking his name. Lucas Hahn was transferred to another school. Thought Sophia's life had finally calmed down. Started to devote herself to her work seriously. Uncle Fu said I had a talent for business, and within 2 years he gave the company to me. And my mom and I started traveling all over the world. Started to work my butt off to make money. Every day was busy and fulfilling. I saw Sophia again. It was at the hospital. Grandmother's attending doctor approached me to talk about some of her conditions and suggested I take her home to hospice care. Was in a messy mood. Coming out of the doctor's office, I bumped right into Sophia. I recognized her immediately. She didn't recognize me and didn't even look at me. She was 9 years old when I left. It's normal to forget. She apologized profusely, but the note in her hand said she was seeing a psychiatrist. Later I did everything I could to find out what was going on with her. Realized that the girl I had held in my heart and cared for had been shattered little by little during the years I had looked away. Back to grandmother's hospital room. Looking at the old and sick grandmother, I can no longer hold back bawling. Grandmother touched my hair and said with a smile, "Such a big person, why are you still crying?" "I'm sorry, I didn't take good care of you, silly boy." Grandmother doesn't need you to take care of her, just take care of yourself. On the way to the partner's company, Sophia was thrown out by the security guard. Watching her sitting on the floor in a state of disarray, I felt like a knife in my heart. Liam, assistant, came to my ear and said, Ms. Sue has been slandered by the internship unit for having character problems. She came to seek redress. I knew about it, but I never thought that they would treat my girl so violently. Walked forward to help her up. She looked at me with surprise. Without saying a word, I pulled her into my car. Liam, assistant, found a tea house and told us to go in and talk. Handed her a tissue and asked her if something had happened to her. At first she was reluctant to talk. Waited quietly. After a long time, she finally burst into tears. Perhaps she had suppressed her emotions for too long and finally found an outlet for them. She talked for an hour and cried for 2 hours. When she was finally quiet, I said, I can help you. She looked at me in disbelief. Tomorrow, wait for me in front of the school. With these words, I left. The next day, I met her in front of their school, used all the resources at my disposal to solve all the obstacles and difficulties she faced. After solving the biggest obstacle, Mrs. Hahn, she took hold of me as I was about to leave and asked carefully, do you need me to do anything for you? Marry me? I said, the reason I wanted to get a license with Sophia was to declare my sovereignty over the Hahn family, to prevent them from harassing her again. Later, facing Sophia's skeptical eyes, I had to say that Grandma wanted to see me get married. That's why I hired her to put on a show with me. She believed me. So I took her back to her hometown, spent the best 30 days of grandmother's life together. At the same time, I saw her vulnerability and sensitivity, depression, and breakdown. I became more and more afraid to tell her who I was. After Grandma passed away, I became very busy. During the time I was traveling, she left secretly. When I came home and looked at the empty room, I was a little lost. Silently paid attention to everything about her, not daring to go to her, then to get her. I wanted her to be happy more. In these 10 years or so after Uncle Sue and Auntie Sue passed away, the happy moments that belonged to Sophia were too few. Even during the time she was with me, I rarely saw a smile on her face. If by leaving me, she can find joy in life again, I'd like to see her get married, have kids, start a new family. But that person can't be Lucas Hahn. Was surprised to hear from Sophia again. Although she just wanted a divorce, didn't lie to her, the schedule is really full. But if I really want to take some time to get a license, I can still do it. But I wanted to buy myself a little more time. Give her the rest of her life with food and clothes on her back. Surprisingly, she doesn't want anything. When Vincent, lawyer, told me about it, I was a little angry. I work so hard every day and she thinks I'm worth less than $5 million. Who's she looking down on? At the same time, it gave me some fantasies. She knew I was rich. Would she not want to divorce? It doesn't matter if she doesn't love me. She loves my money too. Lucas Hahn's appearance disrupted my plan, but it also brought me closer to her. At the same time, I could see how much she had grown in the past 3 years. When she said she didn't need me anymore, I almost shed a tear. My girl has finally grown up. She may not love me, but don't lose the ability to love. Fortunately, she loves me too, though she never said it out loud, but I feel the same way.